Hello, in this video we are going to be talking about the Danish government's complete lack of sovereignty as well as what is actually taking place in regard to the truck driving and EU licenses that I'm currently working on getting. Exactly like with the temp job, which I've made videos about previously, I have again forecasted what was going to happen as soon as I started this education. This time I have written directly to the Ministry of Education here in Denmark, directly spelling out how my fellow classmates and even the teachers are inevitably going to be subjected to electronic harassment and manipulation by foreign interests who from afar are transmitting invasive communications. This of course is a well-known situation that is happening only because of how the Danish government allows a social engineering experiment to be carried out on Danish soil against Danish civilians by foreign actors. In regard to the education and the certificates that I'm trying to obtain, this will inevitably lead to a completely untenable situation for everybody. That is completely incompatible with a healthy learning environment. Hence, of course, why I have written to the Ministry of Education, who will undoubtedly claim ignorance and or engage in stonewalling. To no one's surprise, and exactly as predicted in my letter, it didn't take many minutes for this electronic harassment situation to begin to occur, and by day 3, the entire class of around 25 students or so, plus the teachers, had all individually been subjected to some kind of invasive harassment or manipulation. Because of the demographics of this class, it is mainly the homoerotic nonsense, as I call the theme of their electronic harassment, where they constantly try to be as shocking, vile and disgusting as possible towards anybody and everybody, only to blame me for everything that they are communicating to people. Despite the class mainly consisting of men and boys between the ages of 18 and 45, the few women in the classes are also being targeted in the very same manner. A glaring contradiction, you might say, since they so desperately want people to believe that I'm gay. Nonetheless, women are also targeted just like the men. In fact, it appears that it might be the women that they are trying to coerce into being false victims of mine, in some Kafkaesque way. Needless to say, the whole situation is completely untenable, and I haven't even begun to talk about the propaganda campaigns directed at me in front of everybody, where I'm constantly being accused of every despicable thing known to man under the sun, as well as being continuously associated with piss and shit. The social controllers are literally using directed energy weapons on me in front of everybody to cause overactive bladder or constipation, only to highlight the biological issues that they are directly causing me with these directed energy weapons. Just to give a clear example of the lengths that they go to in order to ridicule and discredit me. For some godforsaken reason, people are almost entirely blaming me for what is taking place, despite how people in real time are actually witnessing for themselves exactly what is happening. This is how effective the invasive manipulation of my classmate is. It is a type of induced Stockholm syndrome, perhaps. Of course, it's not just my classmates either. I'm basically hated and despised by a large percentage of the Danish population who wants to see me gone. The main justification for this hatred, as well as the social engineering program in general, is that I'm supposedly some kind of notorious serial sex criminal. And by all accounts, there is very little that I can say or do to change many people's minds. And the very fundamental fact that I have never been charged, prosecuted or found guilty makes very little difference in the minds of these people. As well as the social engineers behind this experiment are explaining away the lack of charges and indictments simply by proclaiming that I supposedly committed these horrible sex crimes before I was criminally liable, meaning before I was 15 years old. Not only is this false, but I likewise can prove it. There is no paperwork on me in regard to such things as sex crimes or incest. And by the age of 16, I was institutionalized at Sun Garden, a place for troubled youths. I have the actual paperwork from this. It literally says that my mother gave her custody over to the municipality of Kommune. The reasons for it and why the institution of Sun Garden got custody over me is written in black and white. In short, I was using drugs and heading towards a life of crime, which also happens to be true. Do you think that if I was some kind of child psychopath or sex criminal, it would not appear in the actual paperwork from the time? And when this false propaganda narrative ultimately fails under any kind of scrutiny, as it has done previously, before being reinvigorated again and again, then they will just proclaim it's because it happened way back when, in 2002 to 2003 when I lived in England. So let's have a closer look at that, shall we? The age of criminal responsibility in UK is only 10. I was 17 at the time in 2002. Furthermore, I didn't just move to England from Sun Garden with no supervision from that institution, as can be seen in the actual paperwork, where there was somewhat regular supervision, and there are documents describing the ongoing situation, specifically between my father's family and me, in which there are quite a few mentions of the various problems that existed at the time, none of which of course relate to sex crimes or incest in any way, shape or form, nor have I ever been charged or convicted for such crimes in the UK ever. Then we have the super indoctrinated fans of the global social engineering experiment, who will proclaim, well, it's because it's from way back when, in Norway from 1996. The fact that I was only 12 years old at the time where I lived there for a year makes no difference to these people, as long as I'm guilty of whatever foreign intelligence agencies and states are proclaiming, to justify an ongoing illegal social engineering experiment and a likewise completely preposterous public persecution lasting for almost 2 decades now. I have come to realise that people desperately want me to be some kind of prolific sex criminal. Of course, people are being enticed and even indoctrinated to have that belief. Hence why so many resources are being spent all over the world every year to perpetuate these false claims and narratives about some lone Danish citizen on an almost continuous basis for 18 years or so. There is no logic in it. It doesn't take Sherlock Holmes to realise the real purpose behind the social engineering experiment and the public persecution of me, Stephen Bell. It is and has always been to implement authoritarian technocracy, or an authoritarian system of control through highly advanced technologies to be used against us all on scale. So many people, for the longest of time, have been very busy blaming me for things that I have absolutely no control over or part in whatsoever. I think that you will come to regret this in time, if you have any kind of introspection, that is.